What's the worst scandal to happen at your school? The principal slept with a student and his nudes and sexts were leaked. People's willingness to voluntarily collect electronic receipts that incriminate them astounds me. It's a good thing, since it makes it easier to catch those cocky dumbuses. We had a computer teacher slash football assistant coach W. Howlett was just blasted all day. Had so many DUIs he had to get rides to work. But was the cousin of the superintendent, so he kept his job. Let's just say that when he crashed a student's car in the parking lot because he convinced them to let him borrow it, that was the beginning of the end of it. It was a small town. The scandal is that the super tried to cover it up by trying to convince the kid to take the heat for it. To no one's surprise, the kid was not convinced. Said they let him stay on as super for another 2 years. I would have taken a huge bribe, then reported them for both. The lunch lady was having sex with students and buying them alcohol. This happened at my high school as well. Lunch lady looked a lot like Tim Tebow. A kid in my senior year short story class, W. Harlot sat directly behind me, was charged with a stab, beheading and burning of one of his friends slash drug dealer. I remember the day like it was yesterday. Sitting in my short story class when my teacher came in tears because she just heard the news. Whose students didn't find out about it until later. I actually have a friend W. Howler testified in his trial because he purchased the murdering materials at the hardware store she worked. Crazy, Rizzy, man. Some students broke into a local elderly reverend's home to rob him, thinking he was away. He sadly wasn't, and they proceeded to bludgeon him and his wife to death with baseball bats and beer bottles. They were caught pretty quickly, and although their names legally couldn't be published because they were minors, everyone including the local media knew W. Harlot committed the crime. Media caused a circus at our school for weeks. Harassing any student for comment. Many did because they thought it was /cool. Although these 3 kids, 13, 14, 15, were known to cause trouble, no one ever suspected they would be capable of a double homicide. Some highlights. 1. The chorus teacher got caught looking at Lalita porn on his school computer. 2. This kid had nudes of his ex that his friend sent to a bunch of people in school, but he was 18 and she was 14 or 15. So he got expelled, and I believe he was charged with distributing child pornography. We had a whole assembly because of it where the cops came and told us they could see everything on our phones. 3. A kid in my grade and another girl, same girl as in the story above, actually had sex in the bathroom. I learned about it from my band teacher. I was in 4th or 5th grade and someone sketched in the middle school bathroom not to go on school Friday or I will bang bang. This was then brought to the attention of the county and state police and we didn't have school that day and the police searched everyone's lockers for a firearm. This was in Pennsylvania. They were never caught and I do not believe they found a weapon. Our football defense coordinator molested / raped a large number of young boys over a long period of time and no one did a thing about it. What happened when people found out? I'm assuming he's talking about the scandal at Penn State, Pennsylvania State University. Look up the Jerry Sandusky scandal. Gu had been doing it for years under the guise of a program where he basically brought troubled kids under his wing. He started doing this in the 70s, was first noticed in the late 90s, and in the zeros when a guy, a witness, not a victim, tried to report it to his superiors and the university. They just covered it up and took half-assed steps to prevent it from happening again. Within a few years, a victim reported it to law enforcement. A grand jury investigation was underway, and ultimately a bunch of people got fired. Sandusky got 30 to 60 years at his age, essentially a life sentence. A few others were convicted for the cover-up. The athletic program was hit with intense sanctions, which were rolled back a few years ago after the school purged everyone and everything involved. To this day, when people hear Penn State, they think of the Sandusky scandal. In middle school, 8th grade/early 2000s, one of the hot girls sent a couple nude pictures to her BF, and it wasn't long until half the school had them. Police ended up becoming involved to make sure any old copies were destroyed. In high school there was a little scandal involving the teachers and a teachers club called the Hot Tub Club. Faculty members that had hot tubs would host a weekly hot tub party with other hot tub owners. Turns out they were all getting wasted and having a swinging party every Wednesday. Some Bardis pals found out about it, and there was a huge exodus of hot tub teachers my senior year. Edit. The main people involved with the photo were reprimanded but not charged. The girl had a sit down with a counselor to discuss what happened, and we all had a big assembly to discuss the consequences that could happen if people shared those kind of images. It scared a lot of kids straight. Nobody was fired from the school for being in the hot tub club. Teachers left because it was convenient timing with the opening of another high school, and there was constant babble about it. Just for clarity, this all happened in a small town in Western Canada. By the looks of my inbox, both are not uncommon occurrences. How do you even start a swingers club with your co-workers? How does that conversation even happen? Hey Jerry, I've seen you looking up my wife, and yours isn't too bad looking either. What say you, we do some swinging next Wednesday? A overachieving student in my year went nuts and pooped in a bag in a teacher's classroom. She also thought she could run up trees. Turns out she didn't, end up skipping a few years and going to uni early like she was predicted to do. The balance of genius is on a very thin edge, or the pressure from her parents drove her mad. Kid made a chlorine bomb and threw it in the trash can at lunch. Lockdown. Bomb squad. Every single kid and faculty member out on the field in 95 weather for 2+ hours until parents could show up to pick up their kids. What the fudge is wrong with people? This was middle school, so he got expelled and arrested after. 2 years later in high school has back to school, built like a fucking MMA fighter. Full beard and shaved head at 16. Nobody ever said Sugato him or fucked with him in any way. The caretaker killed 2 local girls and hid them in the school. He tried using the clay kiln to burn them. He later dumped them a few miles away. My department lead allowed the baseball team to line up, and she gave them all blowjobs. Happened years ago and confirmed by veteran coworkers I knew. Recently, some of the boys that graduated years ago decided to inform the proper authorities. She was transferred to another school, still works in the district. A teacher had an affair with the students. She was arrested and released on bail. Then a few days later she sent an email to other teachers saying it wasn't an affair, but that she was actually being raped by the student and blackmailed. She even attached screenshots of texts. Later that day, she murdered her husband and committed suicide. Edit. Whoa. This has really blown up. A few people have linked articles in the comments if you are curious. Probably the time a girl gave a guy a BJ in the bathroom. The guy filmed it and sent it to his friend. His friend sent all around the school. Eventually the police had to get involved because the one guy was guilty of distribution of child pornography. This happened between my sister and brother graduating, so it would have been 1996 or 1997. The HS Ag teacher started dating a student at some point. Everyone knew about it and the parents consented. Our HS was, and is, small enough to still participate in senior trips, and the ag teacher went along as a chaperone when his GF was a senior. They shared a hotel room when I believe the student was still technically a 17 years old minor. At the time I remember my parents being rather put off by it, but they still hired the guy as a summer farmhand. I don't remember if he was fired or stepped down, but by the time I made it to HS we had a different ag teacher. They got married and had a child. Divorce maybe 5 or 10 years ago. Their kid goes to our HS now. I don't know why it wasn't a huge deal at the time, but no one really raised a stink or threatened to call the authorities. Today it feels like a case of grooming by a predatory farm boy. This kid was taking his GCSEs, important exams in England, until you get older and realize they mean fudgeal. Whilst at an exam some kids got onto his phone, went onto his notes, and found a 4,000 word document consisting of his sexual fantasies with other girls in his year. Clearly paid attention in English as there was some clever wordplay egg. comparing his shaft to some world famous landmarks. S. The screenshots found their way into a lot of group chats. There were about 20 odd screenshots. S. To put into context how long it was, and it basically acted as a vague repellent for the rest of his time at the school. L. Important exams in England until you get older and realize they mean fudge eel. Perfectly defined. Just maths and English is quite good to get above a C, or whatever number it is now. I know someone with a degree that had to do them to do teacher training, and I have had to prove a few times in adulthood. Keep your certificates, peeps. A girl in my middle school was telling people she had a hit list of people she was going to kill. Got caught with the list and was sent to a hospital for a while. She came back a few years later in high school. Edit. Seems like a lot of people had a similar occurrence in school. This was in Michigan. I also had a hit list in middle school because I was a dumbass. It was a group of about 30 guys that would come to school and play a kind of tag game. If you were tagged during the day, you were assassinated, and the game was over until the next day. My dumbass made a hit list with everyone's name on it. Needless to say, this alerted the principal. Edit. We got a talking to, but we weren't in serious trouble. We used to play a similar game using camera phones when they first came out. The kill was made by taking a photo without the victim being aware of it. Lots of us acting strangely in town, looking over shoulders and ducking behind parked cars. No list. But we were given a bit of a talking to as the college thought there was some intricate form of bullying going on. There was a kid whose girlfriend brought a knife into school and planned to kill herself in the bathroom. He knew her locker combination, so he took the knife and hid it in his, so she wouldn't do it and wouldn't get busted. Someone snitched on him and he got expelled for having a knife on campus. Whole town was pissed. A male gym teacher did land some girls volleyball players. Principal got fired for threatening teachers if they didn't produce enough A's and driving a grade inflation scandal. That and the usual drugs and such. The first kid sounds like a good guy. Didn't deserve that at all. Schools can be dumbasses sometimes, I guess. Yeah. He just didn't want her to hurt herself. And if he'd reported her to the staff, she would have been expelled. I get that rules are rules, but sometimes you've got to make exceptions. First week of high school. PE class. The first section was swim. Wasn't my class, but the class after. This kid was playing a game with his friends in the water. Were a lot cold, hold their breath along. Est. He was going up for air and hit head on the pointy part of the gutter. Tear. And never made it to the surface. Ace. Friends didn't notice. Ice. Teacher didn't notice. Ice. Eventually football players coming back to the locker rooms noticed. Said. He ended up dying. Teacher was fired, although I wouldn't fully blame him as he was attending and teaching kids. Lot didn't know how to swim or weren't strong swim. Mess. One adult for over 60 kids. Kids. That's the school's fault. As a lifeguard, I can confirm that even if there is only one person in the pool, two of us need to be on the chairs. If that person somehow knocks her head and falls unconscious, we need 2 lifeguards to stabilize her, while a third one in the office comes in and brings the dorsal plank, IDK how it's called in English, while the first lifeguard does the proper treatments, while the last one calls an ambulance. Teacher was fired, depending on the rules over where you are. He cold sued the school for those high safety risks. One person for 60 kids is beyond dangerous. During middle school, a few kids sold weed and someone that bought some smoked it in the building, which was just stupid. The kid that sold it to him didn't want to get in trouble, so he pulled the fire alarm so people wouldn't find the kid. We all got to go home afterwards. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.